want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Madmen of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Good day, Madmen Mafia.
We on Ribeiro Kirk M. Samuels right here.
And I'll do be Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Madmen of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
For all y'all out there, you know what I'm saying? That's what we have a real conversation for, you know. Question is, can you handle the truth? You can't handle the truth.
You know you can't handle it. You
Colonel Jessup. Yeah. Colonel Jessup said you can't handle the truth, man.
He said you can't handle it. So what's going on? What's new? What's good in the hood, man?
Man, I tell you what, man, life keeps moving, man. Time keeps on ticking into the future. You know what I'm saying? There's change in the air. It's change in there. Can you smell it? Oh, wait. That's what I'm smelling. Never mind. I'm smelling something different over here. That was a minute ago. I had my door closed. I thought I was all right. But anyhow, yeah, man. Time is ticking, man. The sun keeps going up and it keeps going down. And every time it does that is a new day. It does that enough times, it's a new week. Do it some more times, new month. Some more times, new year, man. And these years keep going by. You know, the older you get, sometimes it seems like the faster time goes, man. It's a trip, man. And then there's seasons throughout the year. And I think there's also seasons in life, man. And so I just entered a new season in life, man, since you asked how things are going.
Yeah, what's that new season?
I'm so glad you asked, man. It's almost like you read my mind in terms of asking what that new season is. Dude, I am almost 52 years old. And just last week, a matter of days ago, I became a grandfather for the first time in my life.
Congratulations. You made it. You're now the old
man.
It, man. You're the old man in the house.
I made it, dude. I made it. I'm a sage at this point. I'm officially I think that comes along with it. I think I'm officially a sage at this point, man. It's kind of a surreal thing, man. Haven't met her yet. I'll meet my granddaughter, in this next week or so, next few days. Be heading out that way to where they are, but it's a different feeling, man. I'll be honest with you. It's a different feeling. It's like wow, when time goes by, man, you can remember like your childhood. You can remember growing up. I can remember my college days vividly, at least the parts I can remember, if you know what I'm saying.
Not all of it, but
not all of it, but most of it, a good portion of it. And, never had I even thought about, I hadn't even thought about throughout my life. It's not something that guys necessarily think about. Like women might think about when they're a little girl, like growing up and I want to get married and have kids and, one day be a this and, be a that and grandma or mama or nana or papa or whatever whatever the names are they want to be called. But I don't know that guys necessarily think about these next stages. I think, we just look up one day and it's like, okay, I guess now I'm that, I guess now I'm that. Like at one day you look up and I guess I'm a husband, or depending on what order you do it in, maybe you look up and say, man, I'm a dad, or whatever it is. And now I get to look up and look in the mirror and say, I'm a grandfather. Man, that's a trip, man.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things we, especially with a lot of the last couple of generations of men, we don't, without the training or the influence of the older generations, we don't think about like the stages and the phases of life. We don't think about like, okay, childhood, adolescence, college, jobs, wife and kids, all that stuff. We don't maybe check it off or anticipate it. Like you said, I think for most guys, we're just going along doing our thing. And the next thing you know, you're like, I'm married. How'd that happen? I got kids. What? Oh, my granddad. Hang on a second. But I mean, to your point too, like being this age, I think getting to the grandparent phase is probably the best phase. And from what I've seen from a lot of my friends and folks I've talked to who get to that phase, like you're wiser, you're older, you've been through the young parent phase, you've been through all those things, you learned all the stuff, and now you get to bring all that sage wisdom and patience and stuff to the grandkids and be able to teach them and guide them and show them all the stuff that you've learned, everything that you learned the hard way, and hopefully try to make their lives better, but also be there as support for your kids who are now young parents. And hopefully they will take on some of that sage advice, some of that wisdom, like, hey, this is how I screwed up in the past. Maybe I can save you a little bit of time and don't do that.
I can really only speak for my story at best, but I didn't spend a whole lot of time with a grandfather in my life. I kind of vaguely like so if anybody's been following along here, I mean, my father died at 46 and his father died at 46, right? I mean, and so um, growing up, I vaguely remember my father's father, vaguely, like, really young memories, but no real time spent. My mother's father, same thing. Like, I mean, he didn't die as young, but I vaguely remember him just from childhood. But in any case, like, I never spent time at the feet or at the knees of grandpa, of that sage. I mean, shoot, for that matter, I mean, I never really spent too much time, with any kind of. I mean, I don't even know if my father kind of got to the sage stage of life. Really, I mean, you die that young, man. You don't, you might have some gray hair, but you don't necessarily have the wisdom that comes along with a lot of gray
Mhm.
hair. I mean, you about to be 50, man. You 4 years older than my father was, man. And when he passed away. So I say that to say I ain't mean to throw your business out there about as far you getting old, but
What's going on here, man? I
whatever,
can throw my
man.
business
I
under the
know
bus.
that was kind of a little jab at you, man. That was kind of a little sneak. I shanked you a little bit, man. I came up behind you in the yard and just kind of yeah, yeah,
See
yeah.
that?
But anyhow,
That's what happens when you're feeling some kind of way about being a granddad.
yeah,
Now you got to be taking
yeah.
shots at everybody else.
Yeah. But I never, I never had the concept of that sage
Mhm.
figure in my life. I just didn't. And so now to be like, man, I'm that. And what does that
Mhm.
mean? I mean, what does that mean? And so when we go through these phases of life, man, especially the fact that we just kind of stumble on these stages of life and realize we're the next thing, then the next step I think is, then we begin to ask, like, well, what is this? Like, especially when you have no baseline. It's like when you become we became a man at some point in our culture. We don't have a rite of passage, so we never really know when we became a man. But one day you look up and I guess I'm a man. What does that mean? You become a father, you become a husband, and when you cross that line, it's like, well, what does that mean? And when we don't have any baseline for that, then man, really all we have to go on is just a guess or what we speculate. I don't know. But these
Mhm.
stages of life, man, ideally the goal is to go through these stages of life. The goal is not to die young and not
Mhm.
have, a long line behind you. But still, when you get to them, it doesn't necessarily make it easy because you don't really know what that means.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest kind of issue, and we talk about so much about not having that lineage, not having that family tree, not having those examples. Because my paternal grandfather passed when my dad was 5, so I never met him. And then my grandmother, she remarried, so that I had like the step granddad who, I saw him a couple summers here and there, and went over there for vacation Bible school, whatever, and hung out with them for 3 weeks in the summer. And then my maternal grandfather, I saw him occasionally, but like you said, I didn't have that like, oh, come over here and sit on my knee, let me teach you about the world, kind of like sage grandfatherly thing. It was just kind of there. So I think for a lot of us, especially men today, we didn't see it, so we don't necessarily have that like, oh, this is next and this is next, and I accept this, and this is my role now, and this is how life progresses as a man. These are the phases of life. I think a lot of us, like you said, just kind of wake up one day like, oh, I guess I'm that now, or oh, I guess I'm that now, or this has just happened, so now I'm that. And so for a lot of us, it's we almost need to create our own, I don't know, calendar schedule, phase calendar, and be like, okay, I'm at this age, now, and so this means I'm probably somewhere in this phase of life, or I can choose which phase of life I want to be in. Sometimes, like in your case, it's not your choice to be a granddad. It's just that, I mean, that's your daughter's choice. Like that's they create the baby, and you get to come along and be like, hey, let me help out with that, or not, or whatever the case may be, and everybody's different experience. But for a lot of us guys, I think we need to maybe take the time to step back sometimes, because we get so caught up in the day to day that we don't realize that there are phases, and that we're running through these phases. We don't even realize like we've gone through phases. Like most of us, to your point, get to 50, and we still feel like we're 18, 19, 20. We're like, hey, where'd all that time go? How can I be over here? And so we're not being present enough to realize like what phase we're in, what phases we're going through, and how to even take advantage of those phases and be like, oh, well, now I'm the sage, I'm the wise elder, I'm this or that, versus I'm just a dude hanging out. I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. And that could lead to some level of, I almost want to say insecurity in terms of, insecurity and maybe even, imposter syndrome. Where you kind of you're in that role, but you don't really even know what that role means. You don't really know what comes along with that. But you can really look in the mirror and be like, man, I'm not built for this. How many guys have looked in the mirror and be like, man, I ain't ready for this. I mean, am I qualified? And the fact is, life doesn't always ask if you qualified. When changes come and when seasons come and all that kind of stuff. Spring is not going to ask us if we're ready for it. It's the next season after winter right now.
Mhm.
And so, sometimes you can look up and be like, man, I don't really know if I'm ready for this thing. But the way life works, you gotta adjust to the season, and whatever you don't have, you need to get. When it turns wintertime and it gets cold outside, if you don't have no hat and gloves, you need to go get some hat and gloves.
Mhm.
So, but there's definitely an imposter syndrome possibility anyway when you when you get to that next season.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we as men especially need to realize is that, yeah, you're not going to be ready for every phase. You're not going to be ready for every season. But the fact that you're there, you handle all the other ones. You can handle this one. It just takes some adjustment, probably some re-education. You might want to pick up a book or talk to some other guys that've been through it, and get their opinions and their experience and whatnot. But I mean, that's why having a crew of guys around you and having community is so important, because when we get to that phase, and you cross that next threshold, and you're like, oh, now I'm granddad. What does that mean? Let me reach out to the other granddads that I know, or the other people who have had those experiences, and glean from their wisdom and their experience. Because yeah, like you said, I mean, life keeps moving whether you're ready or not. And so I mean, as men, we've got to make sure we're ready or prepared, or if we're not, get that way. So, and speaking of being ready, prepared, it's time for our first break. We are the Mad Men of Masculinity. We are on KLDC. We'll be right back.
That'd be a great place to pick up on that tribe aspect of it, man.
Yeah.
That's a great place to
Shoot,
and
if it takes a village to raise a child, I mean, how many villages we need for us?
yeah, exactly. Man, folks, if you're watching this thing, man, now that we're on a little break from our recording here, what do you think? You've been through some transitions, put in the comments, let us know what kind of transitions, what kind of advice you have for somebody going through the different transitions, different seasons in life, different levels and all that kind of stuff, man. I'd love to know. Give me some advice. If you're a grandparent, if you're a grandpa, if you're a grandfather, give me some advice. Put the advice in the comments. Well, we'll read it. Now, if I see it, I'll surely reply. But what's your greatest grandfather advice? I'd like to know. Boom.
You ready?
Yep. We're back.
Yes, we're back.
That's right. We are back. Mad Men of Masculinity, KLDC, 12:20 a.m. in the Mile High City, on the interwebs, everywhere. Madmenradio.com, Facebook, YouTube. It is absolutely free all month long for you to hit like and subscribe. It's free. We won't even charge you. We giving it out for free all month long. Nope. We'll
give you 10 free likes this month.
We'll even let you unlike and unsubscribe later if you don't. But we just have a real talk. This is man stuff. We don't get all off into the weeds. We don't do the hate. We don't really get off into, politics or just gender this or just whatever, us against them. It's us and us against the world, and we're only going to be successful when we do this thing together. So we just have real talk, and we'd love to hear y'all feedback.
Uh-uh.
Give us your feedback on your real talk, man. What kind of stuff that do you and your fellas talk about? But speaking of fellas, as we talking about transitions and going through different phases in life, you know, you brought it up real quick before the break. It is important, man, to have a tribe of guys, to have other men in your life, especially other men in different phases and stages of life. I'm lucky to have, a group of guys and have guys older and have guys younger in my circle that I can not only receive from, but I can also allow information and wisdom to pass through to other people. But having other guys, I mean, ultimately this would be a great place to conclude at the end of the show here. But I think it's appropriate at this moment of we need advice. Like I need advice right now. I need grandpa advice. I've had several guys tell me that, man, that being a grandpa is great. that sometimes you wish you could skip right past having kids and go straight to having grandkids. And so I hear that. I've heard that several times over the past week, man. And it's just great on so many different levels. And so I'm looking forward to that part of it. Grandpa can just be great, be good, be nice. You can give them whatever they want and send them back to their
Yep.
parents.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you can spoil them, Ron, and send them back. Janine says, here's some granny advice for you. Keep working on your personal growth. Stay humble. Love yourself enough to be the best human you could be, which, I mean, that's great advice because it never stops. I mean, growth never
Yeah.
stops. The phases never stop. So it's one of those things that, having people around so you can get some other opinions, other advice. And yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but amazing things from everybody who's been grandparents. They're like, I wish I could, like you said, skip over the first part. But of course, that's your reward for the first part. If you didn't go through the parent phase, then you don't get to do the grandparent phase. And so it's basically your reward.
Mhm.
Plus, now you're wiser, you're older, you're more patient, you get to have more fun with the kids, and then you get to send them back. So it's a great
Yeah.
advantage for you in so many different ways. But I mean, looking at the phases of life and realizing that these phases, they happen. It's just going to happen. I mean, yeah, one day you look up and you got gray hair and you're over 40 and you're like, well, I was 18 yesterday. What happened? But, we talk a lot about trying to be present, trying to be in the moment and acknowledge where you're at as a man, acknowledge what you're doing and acknowledge the phase that you're in so that you can be in that phase, so that you can actually take advantage of that phase, so that you can actually be that guy who is a good dad, who is a good grandfather, uncle, etc. And when we ignore the phases or we just get too caught up in life, life just goes on by. We just forget about it. And I think a lot of the issues that we deal with nowadays is a lot of guys nowadays, without having that community around them, without having those examples of older men and generations and whatnot. We used to all live compounds together. We all used to live in big families and villages together. And so we would see those stages and you would just kind of know, like, okay, well, I'm a kid now, then adolescent, then I'm going to be, the hunter or whatever. Then I'm going to get to the elder phase and the wise grandparent phase and then the tribal leader, whatever. But a lot of us, because of how we are especially in the West now, we're so separated and isolated that we don't see a lot of those phases. And we miss out on a lot of the benefit of having family around, the community around, and the wisdom and guidance that we need for every phase of life. We need those folks around us. But because of how, nuclear family went, how the American economy went, how everything else went, now everybody's isolated and, people aren't getting married anymore. So they're not having families anymore. And then you're not having community anymore. You don't have the village aspect anymore. So I think it's now time for us, especially as men, to acknowledge our phases and then start to build that community around us. Because it doesn't have to be blood. It doesn't have to be your actual blood family. It could be the community around you that you create and turn into a family in a village. Because we all need to support each other, especially nowadays. The world's changing, everything's changing, and we need more community, more support, and more people around us.
There's a couple. There's a couple of Netflix series that are out now, new series that have to do with the frontier days and like Civil War frontier days. I can't think of the name of a couple of them, but I started watching them. And one of the things that really stood out to me, especially over this past week, or really connected with me anyway, is because when they show, of course, it's dramatized, but either way, when they show like the Native American tribe kind of model, and when they show, the chiefs and the elders and the young warriors and then the young boys that are soon to be warriors, and you can kind of see that amongst their their culture. Um, and that really got me thinking um, uh, about about that whole stage aspect. You had the the chief that that would talk to some of the young warriors and say, you started a war with them, and now you went off and killed all of them. Now their fathers are going to come back, and or their sons are going to come back and and create more war instead of peace. And where the young warriors were like, they're on our land, so we need to go kill them all. And the older chiefs are kind of like, yeah, you just created, a lifetime of war for the rest of us because they're just going to keep coming. And that was kind of a wisdom thing. But that comes with the stages. That comes with the stage. That comes with, a chief who was a warrior back then. Who also was the young man who went through all of the stages. There's levels to this stuff. And so being able to sit back and have that perspective, that level of vision, and it was cool that my son even called me early this morning because he called and actually I woke me up a little bit. And it was that early because he's back east too. And, first thing he said when I picked up the phone is, hey, I need some advice. And, it wasn't major earth shattering life advice, but still, it was like, hey, I think you become tech support at some point, for your kids. And then, yeah, like you said, I didn't think about it that way, but a great reward is then you get to have grandkids and you can drive like a rental car. You just drive them into the ground and turn them back in.
Yeah.
Let them be all dirty, worn out, whatever, tired, sugared up, whatever, and then just turn them back into their kids. I mean, so being able to have those levels, man, is important, but it's something that really, really hits home when your kids start to get older. And then, like in this case, when you become a grandpa, that stuff really comes into play.
Yeah, I think that's where we miss out a lot when we don't have that community, we don't have the large family, we don't have those examples of the stages. Because for a lot of us, I know this was my experience quite a bit, was always trying to judge myself beyond my stage, always trying to judge myself as not perfect or better than, because I was attempting to be further along than I was. It's like we're always doing the best we can with what we have, but when you don't have those examples and realize this is the stage I'm in, like when you're in your 20s or teens and 20s, you think you know everything and you don't have some sort of boundary, some sort of awareness that this is the stage I'm in. So I may think I know everything, but I don't really. And so I need to look for advice and get advice from my elders because they've been there, done that, and they know some more. When you're just out there flailing around with no idea what stage you're in, a lot of times you think you should be better than you are, or you think you should be further along than you are. You have all these judgments and things about yourself. Whereas if you had those examples, you just kind of intrinsically know, like, oh, I'm in this phase. I'm in the warrior phase. I'm in the young warrior phase. I'm just out there hunting and gathering and being wild and crazy. And I need the elders to kind of keep me in check because they've been there. They understand. They know. They have that depth of vision from experience. And of course, the elders, the only reason you get wisdom, the only reason you have that experience is because you made all those mistakes in the past and then you learn from them. And so you can pass that down. And so it's something that I wish we had more of. I wish all of us as men, especially, had more of that guidance and those sages and the wise men and the elders to guide us. And if we don't have it, we need to find it because it saves us so much time. You keep beating your head against the wall, thinking you should be further along when you could just have an older gentleman like, look, man, just calm down. You're exactly where you need to be. When I was your age, I was in the same spot. Like, you don't have to be better than you are. You're good right just how you are right now. But when we're just on our own trying to figure it out, we don't get that advice. We don't have that experience to lean on, those shoulders to prop us up when we don't feel like we're doing the best. But that's part of those phases of life that I think we need to be more aware of and acknowledge as we go through life.
Yeah. Once you get to once you get into your 40s and 50s and all that kind of stuff, it might be too late to, well, you might not even have the option of going back and seeking wisdom from a father or from a grandfather. Probably by the time you get in your 40s and 50s, your grandfather's gone, and maybe even your father, and or you have no relationship and you just don't even have the opportunity to go back and close some loops. And so by the time we get to this point, man, we need to go find that. We need to go get that from somewhere. And you have to be intentional. As a man, you got to be intentional about putting yourself in the presence of older men and reverencing the presence of older men and just, soaking up wisdom, soaking up advice, just soaking up, whether it be osmosis or whatever. But you got to be intentional about that because it ain't going to happen because we do live in largely isolated, cultures and everybody kind of goes and does their thing and everybody's just out here scraping and scrapping and we don't get the opportunity to, we don't get the opportunity to just naturally be around others like those Native American tribes where they literally lived together. They did everything together. They ate together, all that kind of stuff. They did their around the campfire dances and all that kind of stuff. And we don't have that in our culture, and we definitely have to find it. So yeah, man, it's not going to happen on its own. You got to be really, really, really intentional about that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to even the last episode that we did where we need to think about our legacy. And if we're not thinking about the phases of life, we're not thinking about those that come after us. We're not thinking about the children and how we generate that legacy and how we make them the best versions they can be by giving them the examples and the wisdom and the experience that we've learned over the years. And, a lot of times when we are isolated and we don't have relationships with our kids or our family or whatnot, we just are missing out on all the wisdom and all the experience and all the knowledge that would make our lives that much better and easier. But when we're out here just flailing around trying to do it on our own and don't have that outlet, don't have that advice, and don't have those elders, then I mean, especially I know for me, I'm sure you can say the same, if we had more of that growing up, we could have saved ourselves a whole lot of this wisdom creation by all the bad choices and experiences we had by listening to or having those examples and guidance from others. So as we take this next break, let's think about what stage you're in, what your life looks like, and how we can better ourselves and the next generation as we move forward. We are the Madmen of Masculinity. We'll be right back. We're making all them noises. People watching.
I know, man. Oh yeah, that's right. People are still watching. I got to clear some stuff out in between breaks, man. When we ain't already. It's all stuff that Tanner gets edited out.
Yeah, that's why we pay him the big bucks because it makes this sound like professional. Let me know what we're doing. Are you ready?
Yep. We're back.
Yes, we're back.
We are back. We are back. We are indeed back. Madmen of Masculinity, KLDC, in the Mile High City. As we record this today.
I know you're doing it.
What?
I know you're talking about the other DC. I know what you're going to say.
Of course, that's what I'm going to talk about, man.
Man.
As we have done this today, our country has gone into different seasons or different levels. We had the peaceful transition of power in our nation's capital, literally, from one president to the other, man. And so as a country, we even go through these different seasons, these different times of transition. And as a country, we need to be able to sit back and to evaluate where are we and what do we need to be and who do we need to be. And there are times in our country where we need to focus on ourselves. There's other times, seasons in history, the world's history, where we also need to be the sage and we need to take the lead. So even, it happens culturally to us as individuals, as men, but it also happens to us, culturally as a society, as a country.
Yeah, that's why you need to have the phases of life and have those examples around you, because if you don't learn from your past, you're doomed to repeat it. And so if you're not getting advice from elders, you're not getting advice from those that come before you that have been there, done that. And then, and granted, you can't take every piece of advice you get from elder folks, just because they're older doesn't always mean that's the right thing to do. They grew up in a different time. They had different influences, but when they have that depth of vision, when they have those experiences, then they can save you a lot of time, and you can at least hear what they have to say and then figure out how that works for you in your time frame. But no, when you were talking about DC, I thought you were going the other way. I thought you were talking about the Commanders, but no, yeah.
Oh, I'm about to do that too. Oh no, don't get twisted. Oh, I ain't done. I ain't done. I'm coming back to that too. Don't even get it twisted, man.
I thought
No
I thought
doubt,
you were in
man.
there first, but yeah, no, we
No
own.
way, man.
We got the second version of President Trump coming in, and yeah, it's a new season, it's a new time. Things are going to be changing, and that's just the way life is. We have to be able to be flexible, and without an awareness and a presence and the ability to learn and gain advice from others, or even to look around and just gain advice by gain experience from watching people and seeing where they're at and what they've learned and how they go about life. Things happen naturally. There's a lot of things which I find interesting. Like you think when you're in your 20s you're always going to be that way. When you're in your teens you think you're always going to be that way, and then life just happens naturally, and then one day you're like, how'd I turn into the old guy who doesn't want to go out and do nothing and just wants to go home and sit and chill and would rather read and sit at the coffee shop than go out, and doing all this stuff. And that's just the phase of life. That's just how life naturally unfolds. So it's something we need to be aware of and acknowledge. I mean, there's nothing wrong with aging. There's nothing wrong with the next phase of life. But when we don't acknowledge it, when we resist it, when we fight against it, then we just make our lives harder.
Since you brought it up,
What did I bring up?
since you brought it up,
What my fault?
phases in life, man. My team. I'm gonna call them the Redskins until they win the Super Bowl, but that might be in a couple weeks. Because my hometown football team is doing it up, doing it big time, right? So you had an owner for decades who nobody liked, who thought that basically, he could just kind of do things his way, which is basically buying old players and all this other kind of stuff. I'm just gonna put it whatever. It didn't work. Sold the team, and within basically within a year or two, now this team is in the NFC Championship, right? And the other day I was thinking about it, I was like, man, that's kind of like being with your girl and you break up, and in a year or two you look up and she's looking fine and she's winning, and you just looking back like, man, how, how come I couldn't do that in all these years? Man, I've been with you for 20, 30 years, and now you get a new man, and now you're going off doing your thing, and it is it's a new season kind of thing, it's a new wisdom kind of thing, but it doesn't take necessarily a whole lot of years under your belt. I think now with just the evolution of a whole lot of things can be condensed, and not even a new thing. If you think about it, when we talk about our founding fathers in this country, if you look up how old the men were that signed the Declaration of Independence, I'm sure the average age is in the 40s. I think. I think it's like late 30s, early 40s, or something, or mid 40s, or something like that. So our founding fathers, hadn't even reached 50 years old yet. But yet at the same time, there's they put together a concept, an experiment that we call America, to form a more perfect union. Um, that's the longest running continuous government in the world right now. And so it doesn't necessarily take a whole lot of years, but it does take wisdom. And if you don't get to the point where you apply the wisdom, I like to say that wisdom is when you have information that you have applied to life. And I mean, Google gives us all the information we need, but that information doesn't make you any more wise. It's not until you apply different things. And so, but you have to implore, and you have to apply the wisdom that you gain through life in order to have wisdom that you can actually pass down to those that come behind you.
Yeah, that's why young men need older men in their lives. They need mentors. They need, fathers, grandfathers, uncles, because th- there's no way to explain to a younger person the experience you had and the wisdom you've gained from all the mistakes you've made. And it's like, I remember having a conversation before. I think it was with that old girlfriend who was like 12 years younger than me, and I was just trying to explain the difference between 20s and 30s, and just how you calm down and things aren't as important because you've had enough experience that it's just not that big a deal. You don't freak out about every little thing. And it was just one of those things where it's like, I don't know how to explain it to you. I just know that this is how it is, and this is how my experience is. And when you are a young man and you're out in the world, especially when you're full of testosterone and hormones and you're just running around with your nose wide open, you need older men to check you sometimes, because a lot of times a more experienced gentleman and more experienced man with a little more wisdom will see the red flags that you don't see. Will see the things that could take you down the path you don't want to go down. It could save you a lot of time and hurt and pain in the future. But when we don't have those guys around us, especially as younger men, then basically we're going full tilt at the wall. And we're going to hit it, and we're going to have all the pain and suffering that we most of the generation before us had, that we could probably save ourselves some time. So we're always promoting and attributing, like, have older men around you, have a community around you, and learn from them. Ask them questions, because especially as young men, we're so hard headed and we're so full of hormones that we think we know everything, and then when we don't have that experience to lean on, and we have to go do everything on our own, it's a hard knock life, man. It can be very painful, but if you have some experience around you, you have some wise elders around you, they could save you a lot of heartbreak, because a lot of times we get blinded. We can't see the forest for the trees. When you have somebody else there who has some experience to say, hey, how about this? Or look at this angle, or maybe think about this, or what about that, could save you a whole lot of time in the future.
Yeah. And it is important for older men to get in circles with younger men, to be intentional about that. You have something, if you're older, whatever. I mean, if you consider yourself to be an older man, you got to think about it. Like these days, the men who were in their early 20s and even late teens in Vietnam are now in their 70s, right? I mean, and so, and we don't even think of Vietnam as being like that long ago, like, we World War II or nothing like that. And so, when you are older, I would ask and implore you to get in circles with younger men who are younger than you, because we need what you have to offer. We need that level of wisdom, because we honestly don't know. And, most of us did not have an older figure, did not have a gray haired man in our life to show us just even some basic stuff, and so if you're an older man, we need you, and we need you to get in places where we are and help us. I would love to have advice from men who have been grandpas for 20, 30 years. I mean, man, I mean, that'd be great for me. I don't know anybody like that, but it'd be great if older men were in some of these same places and spaces where we can learn from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you brought up, when talking about like the Native Americans and the tribal culture. One of the reasons the tribal culture worked so well was that you had all that experience together. And so when you had the young warriors who were of child rearing age and they had all the energy and they could go out and hunt and stuff, they weren't necessarily responsible like we are here in the West and in the modern age. Those parents weren't actually really responsible for raising the kids. The elders were. They had the experience, they had the wisdom, they had the patience. So they were the ones there to pass down the knowledge to the younger kids and to watch over them. So everybody had a job. You were the younger one, you were fit, you were a child rearing age, so you created the kids, but you didn't have the experience and the wisdom to raise them properly. So that's what the elders were for. And plus, you were busy because your job was to go out and hunt and farm and fish and whatever else and provide for the whole community. And so we are missing out so much when it comes to having all the phases of life together. One of the things I think would be a great idea, and I would love to create it or find or have somebody else do it at some point and get some, venture capitalists and some investors and create it, but putting together a daycare and an old folks home so that you have the wise elders raising the kids and being there. Because I mean, nobody gets along better than little children and grandparents. Nobody gets along better and is more on the same kind of level as little kids and grandparents. And so having something like that that gives the grandparents a reason to live, and they get a chance to pass down the wisdom to the little kids, and the little kids get to learn from them while the parents go out and actually make money and provide and do all the things that they need to do. And so us being isolated and unaware of the phases of life that we're in and not having the community around us is really detrimental in a lot of different ways for the legacy and for the next generation coming up.
How cool would it be to have a daycare in the same building as an old folks home, as a
Mhm.
retirement home? I mean, how cool would it? I get it. There's probably several things you got to consider liability wise and all that kind of stuff, and you got to have supervision for both and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But how cool would it be in the same building to have to have a daycare and a retirement home, or as we call them, old folks home? I mean, to have those two energies in the same building, man. I think that'd be in those two different generations, separated by a generation, being in the same building and being able to, to interact to some degree and all that kind of stuff, man. It would bring life to both of them. And so,
Yeah.
man, I think stuff like that would be a great idea, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I think the thing should be is that having,
Yeah,
because it brings life to the old folks, it brings life to the kids, and it's
yeah,
it's just a match made in heaven. Then it frees up the parents that got to work to go do their work. So speaking of work,
yeah,
we're going to take
yeah.
our final break. We are the Madmen of Masculinity right here on KLDC, and we'll be right back. Boom.
Man, that'd
What's
be
funny,
that'd be a
y'all?
dope idea, man. That'd be a dope idea.
I mean, that's the
Like I
thing.
said, even I mean, like I said, just even in the same building where there was like little playground outside the window, for
Yeah.
the grandparents and great grandparents to look out and see little kids playing, or they would, do little arts and crafts and have it up in the hallways or something like that, or whatever. I mean, you probably can't just let the kids run free through the building, but like I said, just to have that kind of stuff. Maybe you do have some, story times and all that kind of stuff and blah blah blah. But that kind of stuff
Well, I
would be
mean,
cool.
if done correctly, that they would be like because having the older folks with the kids, gives them life, and they'll probably be healthier and more vibrant and more energetic because the kids are there, and it gives them something
Mhm.
to look forward to and something to do. And so, like having them there to, yeah, do arts and crafts with the kids, hang out, play with the kids, and the kids get great daycare because they're with older, more experienced folks. I mean, yeah, probably wouldn't want to send them to the Alzheimer's ward, but for just the
Yeah.
folks who are retired and need to be
Right.
on, can't live on their own anymore. That'd be a good way
Yeah.
to keep them healthy and fit. But anyway, you ready?
Having it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do that. We're back.
Yes, we're back.
We are back. We are back. And during the break, man, we are be coming up with business plans and
Hmm.
all kinds of great ideas, man. Somebody needs to put a daycare inside of a nursing home or part of the building or
Sure.
something like that. Somebody needs to do that, man.
Or
Everybody,
maybe
they
just,
all both kids and old people need nap
yeah,
time.
yeah,
I mean, they both
maybe
need somebody
together.
to, they both like macaroni and cheese and soft food.
Yeah, get them all the Jello and mac and cheese they want, all the soup. Watch all the movies,
And
and
maybe it could subsidize, the cost
yeah,
of being in the nursing home.
yeah. You
I
could you
mean, maybe it could
combine
be cheaper.
daycares and nursing homes, and I think it's better for both sides, and then it frees you up as the provider to go out and provide.
And the folks in the nursing home wouldn't be just lost
Mhm.
folks, just in terms of forgotten about, tucked away. So anyhow, great idea, man. And the whole point is, having these different generations that have gone through different phases be able to pass down information, and the younger generation being able to pass up the inspiration. The inspiration for the elders to open up and to share what they have. I mean, that kind of stuff would be huge, man, because yeah, we do need that. We need to receive from our elders, but we also need to to allow it to pass through and to give to the next generation, the youngers. That kind of stuff is important to us as people. We should have wisdom flow through us, not to us, but through us, and not even just from us, but through us. Wisdom should flow through us from generation to generation, man. And as you get to these next levels in life, everything you went through should not be wasted. It should not. The people that went through the depression have a whole lot to share with us as far as wisdom with our excess and our waste and all this other kind of stuff, and vice versa.
Yeah, I love what you said about that. Just as the elders pass down wisdom, they get inspiration from the youngers, and I think that's something that we're missing out on. We don't have the large family units, we don't have the communities, we don't have the village mentality or the tribal mentality, and so we're missing out on a lot of that because once you get to retirement age nowadays, a lot of folks, I mean, the average life expectancy for a man nowadays in retirement is like 18 months, unless he has something else to do after he retires. Because now, what does he live for? What is his purpose? Why does he get out of bed every day if he doesn't have that job? Well, if you had grandkids or you had some new project or some new creative thing, or you could get to be the wise elder and lead the community and be the one to, help
Hmm.
guide all the younger kids who are inspiring you and giving you a reason to live. That everything was created by God in the universe harmoniously, but we've been so separated and divided in so many different ways that now we're missing out on all that harmony and benefit that comes from having all those phases of life and generations together. I mean, how inspiring is it when you're in your 40s and 50s and getting to grandparent age to see the young kids in the teenage years and going into the 20s and be like, oh, I remember when I was there. Oh, I remember that. Oh, that's gonna be good. You get to kind of live vicariously once again through the younger generations. But when we're all separated off doing our own thing, then we miss out on so much on both sides.
How great would it be to have folks from what we call the greatest generation be able to pass down wisdom and knowledge to us about service to country? How great would it be to have even men our age hear from somebody that stormed the beaches, in
Hmm.
Normandy or wherever else? I mean, what it's like to be in that amphibious boat and have that front end come down and to experience that Saving Private Ryan scene and all that kind of stuff. Like, what is it like to do that? I mean, what is it like to be in a draft like in Vietnam? I mean, and so, how great would it be for us to have that kind of wisdom? To have that kind of passed down to us. All of us would be better. For them, it would be better because it would probably bring some kind of purpose full circle in terms of what they did in their service to their country. And for us, we don't know that. I mean, we've been we come out of a period where we've been at war, quote unquote, the longest continuous period in America's history. But that wasn't the same as World War II, where we had, millions of troops in a theater and we had people literally storming beaches and all this other kind of stuff. We haven't had that. And so how would it be if our military would hear from some of those guys? That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that gets lost in translation is when you don't have those generations together and you don't have that experience. I mean, you look at the divide between and it's interesting to me how suddenly now we have four different generations all kind of coexisting. Boomers, Gen X, Gen Z, Millennials, Gen Alpha, whatever it is. I've never in my life since up until now heard of so many different generations. But I mean, in the past, there was always that same delineation, but they weren't highlighted and they weren't
Mhm.
so separate and disparate because they were all together. So they were learning from each other. I mean, you look at a lot of the younger generation now, not having experience with grandparents and older folks, stuff like that, all the things they don't know and understand. I mean, shoot, the biggest, funniest thing I was watching something guy was talking about, oh, my kids want to go to escape room. So I locked him in the garage and gave him a rotary phone and a pager and told him to figure it out. Well, they never, it was 2 hours later, they still didn't get out because they don't have the experience. They didn't learn from the older generations about old technology or about these different things. And then the older generations have no idea what's going on with the younger kids because they're all separated and on social media and on their devices and stuff. So there's none of that kind of crossover. There's none of that interplay of knowledge and experience between the generations. And so in a lot of ways, each generation is kind of in its own little bubble, missing out on so many different things that could be beneficial for all generations if they would come together and start sharing their experiences and their knowledge.
The admirals and generals in our military right now joined the military in the early 90s.
Hmm.
I mean,
That's when
literally,
we
I
were
mean,
there.
those people, exactly. Though, I mean, seriously, the men and women who are admirals and generals joined the military in the early 90s. I mean, how many of us listening remember vividly the early 90s? The songs we listened to and all that kind of stuff. And so, so it's really not that long ago that the generation now who are in the sage positions in our culture, it's really not that long ago that we kind of came onto the scene. And so, you know, I mean, man, what if our young people would hear some real good music? I mean, some baby making music. I mean,
Yeah.
just some good old love songs. I mean, maybe
Mhm.
and not even young folks. I mean, like, man, what if we had some good old Teddy Pendergrass or something like that out,
Very
maybe
white.
folks wouldn't be so whatever about dating and relationships and all that kind of stuff, man. I mean, maybe it's such a mess because we've largely lost. Like, there's a wisdom gap. You talk about the information gap and the income gap and all that kind of stuff. I think we have a wisdom gap in our country.
Mhm.
We have just a perspective gap. I mean, the wisdom of people who experience stuff. People who lived through the civil rights era. We don't appreciate the freedoms that we have always because we didn't live through some really dark times in our country. We didn't live through the depression. We didn't live through World War I or World War II. We didn't live through the civil rights movement. We didn't live through all these different kind of things. And so a lot of that you gain, a lot of that wisdom that you gain from going through those time periods as a country and just as a society, we don't have that because we didn't experience that. We didn't get that. So we got to find a way to get something so that we can pass down to the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, and when we don't have the coalescing or the interaction of the different generations, I mean, that's how guys our age turn into the crotchety old men on the porch in the rocking chair, like, get off my lawn, because we don't have any experience with the younger generation and we don't learn from them. And a lot of this isolation that's going on is creating this bigger divide between the generations because they're just not learning from each other, they're not experiencing from each other, and so there's just too many disparate ideas and different opinions that could be mitigated in a lot of ways just from hanging out together and having experiences. And like you said, older generation sharing their experience with the younger generation teaching the older generation about what's going on now and different things so that we can have more understanding and more empathy and more unity between the generations and the communities and the families and whatnot. But it's just one of those things that when we overly emphasize youth and not enough about wisdom and age, and we all are trying to stay young and not actually accept the fact that we're getting older, and that's not a bad thing. These phases of life are there for a reason because we're all supposed to be a unit. We're all supposed to work harmoniously together, and we're all supposed to be together doing these things. When we get separated and put in our little boxes, like there didn't used to be old folks' homes, there didn't used to be retirement homes. The grandparents were the elders and the sages in the house. They were still part of the family and part of the community. And then we decided, oh, well, it's better to go live in the city away from nature and the farms and away from our natural family unit in the village and not have those experiences together, not having the elders with the younger kids and from babies on up until 60s and whatnot. We don't have that experience mixing together anymore. We don't have all those things. And I think we need to start consciously creating those communities again and bringing those things back because it gives the elders a reason to live. It gives all that wisdom to the youth so that they have a better experience and better preparation for the world that they're getting ready to go into. And all the separateness and isolation that we're going through right now is really killing a lot of the community and benefit for the next generation.
We do overemphasize youth. I think we overvalue youth, but
Hmm.
at the same time, we say youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
We overvalue that. I mean, we got people who don't want to look older. They don't want to have wrinkles in their face or whatever. It's like, you 50 years old. You're supposed to have some wrinkles in your face.
The
I mean, for
gray,
that
come on.
matter, you're supposed to have some grays. I mean, it's not a bad thing, really. And yeah, I mean, our to go back and to make that the standard of just everything's got to be young and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, that's great. I'm not an advocate for just getting old and crotchety, but I am, realistic about the fact that the goal is to get older. I mean that the goal is to get old and gray. I mean that's the goal. The goal is to have you know generations behind you that you can pour into, and so we do overvalue youth, man, and we need to recognize that going through these seasons, man, it's great to. It is absolutely great to be able to have some wisdom to pass on because there's levels to this thing, man, and we got to experience those levels.
Yeah, we've got to know that we're going through phases. Life is about phases and experiences. Don't fight your age. Don't fight your phase. Accept it, acknowledge it, and because each one has gifts, each one has its magic, each one has its time, and so when we're like, focused on youth all the time, then you're not experiencing the magic of being a grandparent or being the elder or being the sage. And so, as we keep doing our show and keep throwing information out there, let us know what you think. Let us know your experience. And Kirk needs some advice from all you grandparents out there, because he's now a new grandparent. But until next time, we as the Madmen of Masculinity are here on KLDC, and we are out.